Okay, we're going to be creating a test-driven development TicTacToe application. Okay, let's go for it. We'll be using NUnit as well, and we'll be using .NET Core, C Sharp. Okay, let's go for it. Okay, first of all, we'll be creating a new project, a class library. We're just going to name it accordingly, a .NET Core class library. And using TDD, we have to which is just test-driven development. We write tests, make sure the tests are failing. After the tests are failing, we write just enough code to make the test pass. That's it. And then after the test pass, then we're good enough. We go to the next business rule and so on and so forth. So business rules are vital. So now we're just going to rename our classes. Your whole application will be based on how thorough your business rules are. So it's very important to communicate with business analysts to make sure all your business rules are thorough, and are in detail so you can add them as tests, then convert them from failing tests to passing tests. Now we're just going to add the unit testing project, also .NET Core. Okay. Now what we're going to do is make sure it's building, our solution is building. The build succeeded. So the next thing we're going to do is run the pre-existing tests, make sure NUnit is functioning correctly. Just going to open the test explorer there and make sure everything is as we expect. Okay, so we can run NUnit tests. Now the next thing would be just renaming the files, and then after renaming the files, we're going to start adding our core tests for the game. Just going to rename the files, and we're going to rename the namespaces as well, just to make sure they're logical, because naming just later, if the application gets more complex, it'll actually help in modification, bug fixes, and the likes. So .NET Core, everything is in order, namespace is in order. We're just going to change the namespace here. Okay, we're just going to rename this Control R, just to rename, or otherwise you can right click and just select rename. Okay. I'm just going to name quarters to be more descriptive. Yeah. So in this, we're deciding to have a board class as well later on, which will manage the board, and then we're going to have a game class, which will manage the board and other game logic. So the first test is to make sure empty slots should be equal to 9, or equal to the number of squares. We just call it squares. Empty squares should be equal to 9 initially, or equal to the number of rows multiplied by columns that we decide on a new game, whenever we create a new game. Okay. um, we should name this we should name this correctly, just to remove the ambiguity between the namespaces and the class names. So we're just going to rename it to the game itself. I'm going to rename it to TicTacToe game, just to make it easier. I'm going to add a reference to our project first, and then we'll do the renaming. Okay, we're just going to rename to TicTacToe game, which will be easier for us. Going to rename the file as well so they're consistent. Just going to do that and then remove the namespace because it's actually arbitrary. Okay, and now we're just going to, usually I just write the methods here and then I let Visual Studio generate the methods for me. Empty slot count. Okay, I'll just go. Just go. That's how we just let Visual Studio actually just create the method for us. On that hint, if you click the hint, there's generate method, which will create an empty method. Now we're going to run the tests, and the test should fail because that method should be throwing an exception. A test explorer should tell us exactly that. Wonderful. How many times do you hear someone saying wonderful when something's failing? But in this case, it's a good thing because the test must fail first, and then only then we can actually make it pass. We're going to write a second test, um, and then we'll see. So we're just going to demonstrate this by writing a number of tests and making them fail. Then after they fail, then we can make them pass. I'm going to write the most minimal code to make the tests pass. So the next business rule that we'll be attending to here, we must make sure after we play each and every move that the number of empty squares should decrease. So we're just going to make the 9 a variable, and we're just going to decrease it. And the initial empty squares, and then I'm just going to set it to 9, and then afterwards we're just going to set and make sure you can control D or control C, control V, just to copy the current line, because we all let's make a move, give it a column and a row, and then I'll take the current player symbol and just put it on the board. That's UI. So you can create that. Control C, Control V, then copy that over. Alternatively, just Alt and up or down arrow will do that. So yeah, it should be 9 minus 1, which is 8 slots left. Then we're just going to generate the method using Visual Studio. This is Visual Studio 2017, by the way. I'm sure 2017 and going forward should have this regeneration. Otherwise, it's very trivial to create these. So this is our column, and then this will be our Y. Yep, cool stuff. So let's just make sure both tests fail. Perfect. Both of them fail. Awesome stuff, man. So what we're going to do is make sure the tests are passing. The first thing we're going to do, let's just go to the empty squares method. Then we're going to create a board object, and then we're just going to create the board class as well afterwards, which will manage the board, and then the game will manage the board and other game logic. Just going to create a new class called board. Okay, wonderful. Just internalize it. And then here we're going to have our rows, number of rows, number of columns, and yeah, and we're going to just monitor the number of empty squares. This will be quicker than actually checking our array each and every time. CTOR and then tab twice, we'll just create a constructor. Then in the constructor, we're going to initialize our variables. Initial is going to be 9. Alternatively, you can just add it in the constructor as a constructor variable and modify the x and y accordingly. Actually, this is just going to be extracted later on from the x and y, or the number of columns and the number of rows that you want for the board. Okay. Now we're just going to create the board itself. We can either use integers or characters. Yeah, we'll just put integers. We'll just change it to characters later. Just going to say new integer array. Oh, we're using this C#. Yeah. That's one thing with knowledge of quite a number of programming languages. You have to remember the syntax. Cool stuff. Okay, now we have our board. We're just going to initialize our board to something else. Let's just make this dynamic, which will be easier to modify later on if we need a bigger board. We can make the set read only. Yeah, I can make the set read only, and yeah, I think that would do. The set we can make private of the two, but we'll look at that. We'll look at that. We'll look at that a bit later. Now what we're going to do is just initialize the board to something empty. So we're going to define what our empty is, and then we're going to initialize our board to that. Each and every square should be empty initially. Okay, just going to create another variable. Just iterate through the rows. Just call it J there. Perfect. And then we're just going to modify our board. Let's just name this to something more logical. Yeah. Okay. And then board, row, column and row. Set it to something. Yeah. We'll make it variable a bit later. Okay. Create a constructor here as well. Just initialize board. Cool, awesome stuff. And then we're just going to get the number of empty squares from the board object. Okay, we haven't created the method yet. We're just going to create the method. Empty square count. Then we can even create a property. That will do as well. Make it read only. Just return the empty square count. Cool stuff. Okay, just going to make this dynamic. Cool. So it's going to be 3 by 3, which is 9. So one of our tests should pass now. The empty slots count when we create a new game should be 9. Awesome. Success. Hey, this is great joy when a test passes in TDD. It's just wonderful, man. Wonderful stuff. Okay, let's make the other test pass. Okay, Control T should search for all methods. Let's just go to make move, and in here, just going to write minimal test to make it pass. So in board itself, we're just going to make a move. And then after making a move, we're going to add a symbol as well for the current player. It's not currently a business rule to make it dynamic, the player symbol. So we're just going to use X's and O's. Cool. So initially this is going to be X's, and then we'll change it to O's when a player makes a move. Okay, make move is just going to invert that, and then after inverting that, we're going to make the number of just going to make a move, and then we're going to decrease the number of empty squares. Okay, now we're going to invert the player symbols. O, yep, and then we're just going to set it to copy that, paste it there to X. Cool. Awesome. Okay, in board or the board object, we'll have to just create a method in board, in the board class, which has something to actually make a player move, giving it the X, the Y, and the player symbol, so it can do that modification. Let's just create that method. Awesome. Now we have the method. What we're going to do is just change the board private member to actually have that. Validations will put, that's why I said business rules are extremely important. Validations, for example, whether the cell is occupied or not, should be in unit tests, and we should make sure that the tests start off as failing and then move on to passing. Okay. Okay, let's just change this to just to make things easier, to characters rather than integers. And then we're going to set the default as a blank for each and every square on our board. Okay. Let's just change that to an empty. Or we'll change that to a variable as well, so it can be dynamic. No, the business rules will add later. Okay. Now what we're going to do is decrease the number of empty squares now after we make a move. Cool. So both our tests are passing. Let's just, yeah, this demonstrates the basic idea, but let's just add another test. Once already existing tests are passing, just to add more logic to it. Let's just make sure you can make them a move on an already occupied square. Let's start with out of bounds first. Just make sure people don't enter invalid moves out of the bounds of the board. We're going to test both the column and the row. So this should fail. It fails. Success. It's index out of range exception. Okay, we're just going to tell it to actually expect an exception. Invalid move exception. Just going to tell it when we invoke that method, just going to put an anonymous method here. Just going to put validations there. So if it's greater than the board, the max column, otherwise greater than the max row. You can put less than as well if it's less than 0, but that'll have to be you'll have to write a test for that. Make sure the test is failing and make sure the test is passing. Let's just create this. Max row. You can put less than as well if it's less than 0, but that'll have to be you'll have to write a test for that. Make sure the test is failing and make sure the test is passing. Let's just create this. Just write something logical in there. I'm going to create the two variables. Take an argument. We're just going to create the two variables. Now that they're created, the two properties are created. We can actually use these names for the other two variables, the call count and the row count. So we're going to replace this. Yeah, cool. Also, I'm going to make this. Let's see. Okay, going to change this to read only. You can set them to read only, so you can set them only privately. Okay, let's just make this static. Yeah. Awesome. Now it's our tests are passing. We're just going to add some more tests just to demonstrate, because now we demonstrated how to catch methods which should throw exceptions. Okay. I'm just going to separate them from test both column and row. Make sure if any of them is out of bounds, make sure it throws an exception. Just going to make the column something valid. Now, yeah. Then make something invalid here. Cool. And then let's run the test. See, moment of truth. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So all our tests are running now and all our tests are passing. So let's just see. We can add more business rules. So the more the merrier. So we're going to add another rule. So we want to make sure that we can't play a move on an already occupied square. Okay, it's going to make them okay the same move. Just going to prefix them with the name of the method that we're actually testing there, just for readability and ease of navigation. Cool. Awesome. Let's run our tests. But first, let's just see. Yeah, this should throw an exception. Yes. It will pass initially because there are no assets and the likes, so we should make it fail by throwing the exception. Let's just go there and add the business rule. Modify the code to add the rule inside the code, the validation inside the code. So just do this. So we're going to have a new method that validates if a particular square at a particular coordinate is actually empty or not. It's actually empty or not. So we have to check if it's empty, square is empty. Okay. So if it's not empty, we're going to throw an exception. Okay. Okay, we're just going to put these exceptions in one place and call it TicTacToe. Yeah, TicTacToe exceptions sounds okay. TicTacToe exceptions. Cool. Yeah. Then we're going to rename the class the namespace first to TicTacToe exceptions. Yep. And then this one is going to change as well to invalid move. Okay. This also inherits from the class exception. Okay. Invalid move. Goodness. Invalid coordinates exception. Just going to update this. Awesome. Okay. Just going to create this as well. Then here we're going to validate. Left to have a variable for something empty. Yeah, let's just make one an empty symbol. Then we'll update our initialization as well and introduce the variable up there. Hmm, hmm. You can create a region here, which will, yeah, it's good for navigation. You can navigate your code easier, and you can just collapse it and just to make sure it's not clustered. You don't have to scroll too many times. You can just collapse it there. And then it's convenient now for access and navigation. Cool, 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 cool. Now we're just going to add some comments, especially if something's a bit complex and we don't know. For example, there's some logic in the constructor. Just going to add some comment. Awesome, looks correct, looks okay, looks perfect. Now we're going to run our tests. Make sure our tests are still passing. Now the test should fail. Okay, I think we forgot to rename the other exception after we made the change. Yep, just going to change the name. Okay, what did you name it again? Yeah, really cool name. I'll rename them. Just include it. Use it there. Now that test should fail because we didn't tell it to actually expect an exception. Aha, perfect. It does fail. So we're going to tell it to expect that exception. To tell it that, hey, my guy, that square is actually already occupied. So you can't make a move there. Cool, cool, cool. And I'm going to create an anonymous method here. Then, aha. Now if we run our tests, they should all pass. Awesome. Now this works exactly as we wanted it to. We're able to have business rules. From the business rules, we're able to create failing tests. From the failing tests, we're able to write minimal code to make the test pass. And then now we have our application. You can just add a UI. Please subscribe. Please like. Please turn on notifications. Thank you very much.